Um, Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of Grassroots Racer. Now we have hit 90 episodes. It's a countdown to 100. So thanks to everyone who continues the support to the show. Also, a shout out to Motorcare Bendigo once again who have helped me, work towards getting my Formula V back on track. But let's get on to our guest. So tonight's guest is a very interesting one. He's got an Instagram bio, working hard to make it happen. He's been Toyota 86 Racing. He's done Super V8 Super Utes, and he's also done the Bathurst 6 Hour. So to find out more, I welcome Ryan Gilroy. How are you tonight, Ryan?
I'm good, mate. And yourself? Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, I'm really great. And what I like to ask most of my guests first is, where did it all begin for you, and how did you first get involved in motorsport?
Well, I was a bit of a late starter in all honesty. I started racing when I was about 15, so I'm 21 now, so I haven't been racing all that long, but um got into racing through mainly my dad, really. He was a big Ford supporter. I'm still a big Ford supporter now, and yeah, Bathurst was kind of a ritual in our household, and kind of the neighbourhood I grew up in were all Ford supporters. So kind of our neighbours and our neighbours' neighbours all had V8 Falcons and Mustangs, and we all watched Bathurst. So it was kind of with me growing up, and Dad was also really big into bikes and in fast road bikes and stuff like that. So just all that stuff was kind of around me from the word go, and yeah, it eventually bit me, and yeah, and then we started racing. So
Yeah, so you said your dad was a huge Ford supporter. I can definitely relate with my um father being a true blue Ford fan. I did watch a bit of Bathurst when I was when first sort of can remember. He always used to, you know, get Ford into our head. Ford's the best. So I've had to kind of live with that, and I'm not disappointed. We've had very good teams and drivers in the past couple of years. So we definitely got a good thing going at Ford. But
yeah,
yeah,
no, it's awesome. Yeah, I mean, I was lucky enough. Like I was, by no means am I old, but I'm starting to get a bit older now, and I'm an '01 model, so I kind of got the back end of the very strong Holden and Ford rivalry. So growing up as a kid, for me, it was one or the other. And I remember going to school in primary school, and just that rivalry, even in the playground, was still there. So I was very lucky to grow up at the time that I did, at kind of the very peak of supercars when it was happening. So
yeah. I haven't been lucky enough. It's either Ford dominating it all or Holden. So um, yeah, I kind of I wish I could grow up. Having to watch the races and not know who would win. Because these days it was Shane, or when Scotty Mack was doing it, it was either Scotty. So back then it would have been very interesting to watch. But you did starting karting. So what tracks did you race at?
so I'm a Singleton boy. So Newcastle's my closest track. It's about 40 minutes down the road for me. So I did a lot of racing at Newcastle. I was actually very fortunate to be able to race it both ways, and it's just an unreal track. Obviously, that's why they use it for AKC and one of the rounds for nationals. So, yeah, it was a fantastic track to learn on. There's a lot of great drivers that come out of Newcastle. And yeah, it was just very fortunate just to do a lot of my training there, and got to know the Russell boys pretty well, who obviously have done a bit of Dunlop Series racing and done some features in supercars as well, and just made some really good friends there. And it's one never ending corner at Newcastle. So it was very demanding, and you learned a lot in yourself as a driver, and then you learned a lot about kart setup and stuff like that. So I feel very fortunate to have that track as my home track. I haven't been there for a couple of years, and I really want to get back into it. So, but yeah, no, it was a fantastic track to get started at.
Yeah, it definitely would be considering AKC do a lot of their racing there. So have you got any interesting or bizarre stories from when you were growing up in go-karting?
Um, I mean, I've had plenty of wheels and stuff fall off, and I've been in a couple of accidents while karting. I think the funniest one was probably the first time my mum ever came to a go kart race. My wheel fell off in the final when I was leading my heat. So it wasn't good, and it took a while for my mum to actually come back to a race meeting because she thought she was bad luck. So, yeah, I've had some weird ones. We used to do a lot of camping there actually. Before a race meeting, like I got into karting there because of my school friends raced there at Newcastle. So I had a lot of friends there, and
Hmm.
it was just cool to hang out with them. It was like, to begin with, it was more of a social thing, and I remember just a lot of times we used to camp out in the Watchtower and the Scrutineers Tower and stuff like that. We used to muck around at night. So, but yeah, no, it was awesome. It was really good, really good memories from there.
Hmm. I'm also guessing you would have done a lot of late night track walks.
Yeah, a lot of late night track walks.
Mm.
After a few adult beverages, I must say, but I'm past that stage now in my career. I can tell you.
Um, I know a lot of the kids we used to oh, well, I didn't really do it because Dad didn't want me mucking around, but I know a few kids used to get their bikes and scooters and do a fair bit of, riding around afterwards and, couldn't stop racing, so they did a bit of bike racing afterwards.
Oh, 100%. I mean, I think some of that stuff still goes on now, but yeah, I think it's a really good thing. I think it's how you build relationships in racing. It's the very early stages of building relationships, and although it's, you look at it as a kind of a social thing because you're hanging out with your mates, down the track that ends up helping you because some of
Mm,
your mates could go on to do really great things, and they kind of end up dragging you along the way. So it's your first kind of steps in networking and making those relationships. And when you start progressing through motorsport, you realize that some of those skills that you had making friends
mm.
in go-karting kind of help you in the business world when you start to look for sponsorship and stuff like that.
Yeah, 100%. Um, sponsorship's a very technical thing and it's very hard for lots of people to learn. I'm lucky I'm still young, so I can go in there myself and, you know, having at the time a 13-year-old convince you to sponsor him was pretty cool for them. My partners, they're like, wow, this young kid just come in here and he's asking us to be a partner. It's pretty cool. So, I'm very grateful to have all the sponsors that I do have. Who keep supporting me and well, whatnot. But did you ever do any interstate racing in go-karting or not really?
I did a bit. We did some rounds at Todd Road, just some state rounds, and then we did a bit of racing at Eastern Creek as well. And just we kind of just went around. Like I was only racing for maybe about 2 years, and just because I started so late, we just tried to speed the transition process up, and it was really cool. Like my first ever race I did in the go kart, I think I finished third. So it just kind of went from there. But um, actually, Eastern Creek, funnily enough, was the reason why I had to stop karting. I had a testing accident there and
Mm-hmm.
broke my ribs, and yeah, I was sidelined for a bit, and that's how I kind of got my start in car racing. But yeah, I would have loved to have done the whole the national scene or pro tour or stuff like that and go around the country. I reckon that would have been awesome to do it with my old man and the trailer on the back and stuff like that. But hopefully that's something I get to do down the track in racing. I'm obviously full priorities on car racing at the moment, and karting's just not in the budget there at the moment. But it's something I definitely want to do in future.
Yeah, man, 100%. I would have definitely loved to do nationals as well. I only did one round, and the only good race I had was when it was raining. I went from like 12th to 4th or something like that. So, that
Oh,
was my
brilliant!
yeah, that's the one national round I ever did. And yeah, obviously, Dad wanted me to get out of go karts pretty quickly because he thought quicker I'm in a car, the more years I have behind me. So, you know,
Yeah, 100%. I mean, you're only what 15 now. You've
yeah.
got a long way ahead of you now.
Mm.
So I think what you're doing now is fantastic. And by the time you get to my age, mate, you'll have way more experience than I've got. So yeah, you've got it all going for you. That's for sure.
Yeah, I can be very disappointed after races sometimes, but then I've got to remember these guys, you know, they're at least 2 years older than me, so I don't
Yeah.
I don't really get next year though will be a lot quicker in what we do. So you've obviously done a lot of racing, but what was your first car?
My first road car
Race
or
car.
first race car. Uh, First race car over race was a Pulsar. I actually did a lot in Pulsars when I started. So Yeah, it was a N14 Pulsar,
Yep.
1992 model, 2 liter. Yeah, it was a cracking car to get started in. It was a bit of a bucket, in all honesty, but we made it work. And I started off doing some just club level events, and then I started doing state rounds, and then moved on to the national stuff. So, yeah, got started at Wakefield. Did a lot of stuff at Wakefield to begin with in the APRA series, the Australian Pulsar series. So
Yeah.
that was a great place to learn. And the Pulsar is just it's a really cheap form of motor racing. It's one make series, and it's just a really cheap way to get into motorsport. They're a really robust car. Like I've seen cars get absolutely written off, and they're out on track the next day. They're just absolutely bulletproof.
Mm.
So yeah, they were fantastic learning. I didn't know how I'd go getting in a front wheel drive car straight up, but it seems to have served me pretty well down the track. So
Yeah, man. My first car was the front wheel drive car. My Hyundai Getz. You know, still love it. It's still serving me well. So I did a few Americanas and kind of crosses like that. Even autocrosses in it. Uh, very underpowered, but great learning car, man. But what sort of categories did you race in the Pulsar?
I did mainly just APRA. So I raced in the APRA Championship, like did the odd rounds. I never did a full championship. So yeah, it was mainly at Eastern Creek and at Wakefield. Unfortunately, I got started in motorsport in 2020 right as COVID started. So it was pretty difficult to kind of go anywhere but New South Wales. We
Mm.
were pretty lucky to even race that year. So yeah, did a lot of running at Wakefield. It's now closed, which kind of sucks, but I feel very
Mm.
fortunate that I got to race there a lot, and did a lot of racing at Eastern Creek as well. So yeah, that was my foray into motor racing.
What has been your favorite category, so far?
Uh that's a tricky one, to be honest. I mean, I love racing in the 86s. Just the competitiveness of the category is unbelievable.
Mm.
We went to tracks this year. We went to Townsville, and from first to 22nd, it was 8/10 of a second covering the field. So yeah, seriously competitive. And really made me step my game up. And I love my time in the Utes this year as well. I think that's a fantastic category. The cars they're unbelievable to
Mm.
drive, and the support network and the team around it is really cool. So I really love my time there. But yeah, I think 86s has been a favourite just because of the tracks we kind of got to race at, and
Mm.
just the cool opportunities that kind of come after racing in 86s has been awesome. So
Yeah, I can imagine 86s would have been a very cool series to race in. But what do you love driving about the 86s?
Uh, they're a very unique thing to drive, in all honesty. It was a big step out of Pulsars, and racing and production cars as well. Um, and it was a much larger step than I actually thought it was going to be, just because of the way you have to drive them is you have to drive them on the limit for the
Mm.
entirety of the lap, but you have to be so precise in what you
Yeah,
do. And that's why the data and all the nitpicky stuff is so important, because you have to be millimeter perfect with every brake application, every throttle application, where you turn the car in and stuff like that. And it taught me a lot about driving styles and how to set up the car, and and even your pre-race
yeah,
processes and how you go about, before you even get in the car, you've got to think about what you're going to do in qualifying and how you're going to execute, because they're not the most powerful car in the world,
mm.
and it's so important just to flow the cars and keep the speed up. So they're a really challenging thing to drive, but when you get them right, they're a really rewarding car.
Yeah. I was talking to a friend, and at Bathurst, even though they're quite a slow car, they do still get up to 230 at the end of the Conrod.
They do. They do, yeah. So I think in the speed trap they clock us at about 213, but on our data we see anywhere from 225 to 230.
Mm.
I think if you get in the slipstream, it's about
Yeah.
232, so in the high 230s. So yeah, they get hooking down the straight pretty good.
Mm.
They're very slippery car. Like if you look at them, they look like a bit of a bullet.
Mm.
So yeah, that helps with them. They're certainly by no means the punchiest thing out of the corners, but once they get going, they're pretty good. So
Yeah. So it'd definitely be a momentum game. You'd have to try and keep the momentum up.
yeah, 100%. Like if when we go to a track like Bathurst, most of the lap is 50% of the lap is uphill. So if you, for example, turn one is the start of your lap and you go up Mount Straight, if you muck that up, you kind of ruin the rest of the lap because you just don't have the speed going up the hill, and that kind of
Mm.
just wrecks the entirety of your lap. So you just got to be so millimeter perfect with how you drive the
Mm.
car to make sure you're achieving the maximum amount of pace you can get out of the car.
Yeah, 100%. And it's just one of these things you learn as you do 86s. But you did also mention the V8 Super, so it obviously would have been very fun to drive. Can you tell us a bit about it?
Yeah, the Utes, that was a really cool opportunity that came up. Obviously, through Sieders Racing, Sieders have a lot to do with the category, and obviously it was kind of a no-brainer to get some of their 86 guys
Hmm.
through the category just to kind of help on their development pathway. So my teammate Harry Gray had a bit of a
Hmm.
steer this year, and then it was my turn to jump in. And yeah, they're a beast to drive. I must say I was one of the naysayers when they came out as the turbo diesels, but now that got this new LS3 V8 in them, they're a completely different beast altogether.
Hmm.
It was awesome. They've got about 500 odd horsepower at the wheels, so they've got a lot of power, but they've got the aerodynamic efficiency of a brick. So they're not that fast in a straight line, but they're just super powerful. So they're on a smaller tyre now, so they're on an 18-inch rim now. So smaller tyre, smaller rim package, but it's got so much power and so much torque. It just you've got to learn to look after the tire, and it's got so much adjustability in the car. And being such a heavy car, it's a really unique thing to drive. It's got a full
Yep.
brake bias set up and a full pedal box system. So that was something I had to get used to. I'm used to driving like an 86 as a
Hmm.
production based car, and jumping into a Super Ute, it's like you've got no brake booster, so you go from an 86 having a really light brake pedal to jumping in a Super Ute with a really heavy brake pedal. So it was like driving a proper race car. And from the feedback that we've gotten from certain drivers like Cameron Crick and Aaron Borg, and even we've had Andre Heimgardner have a steer of the car, all their kind of feedback has been really positive, and they've actually related some of the driving characteristics to a supercar. So, yeah, I see the category going
Hmm.
really far in the future, and seeing it being a little bit of a stepping stone into like if you wanted to go towards supercars, I definitely see it being a bit of a stepping stone.
Yeah, I can definitely see it being a stepping stone to supercars because of how quick they are, power wise. Like you get on the power and they just go, but like you were saying, in a straight line, not the quickest thing because they haven't got much aerodynamics. But how different is it jumping from, you know, 86s to Super Utes? You mentioned a few differences, but what's it really like to drive? Like, what are the main differences?
It's a massive difference. Like you go from a little 86 that weighs the best part of maybe 1,300 kilos to a big heavy Super Ute which weighs about 1,800 kilos. So you've got more weight, and then you've got a lot more power to deal with, and you kind of sit in a very weird spot in the car because you've got the pedal box in there, so you've got to move back to accommodate for that. So the steering wheel comes back, and you sit very far back. You're almost sitting where the back seat is
All
in the
right.
dual cab, so you sit really far back, and it's a lot to get used to. Like it's a lot
Mm.
of weight, it's a lot of power, and just the way you drive it is it's so different to how you drive an 86. Like you can't in an 86 you can get away with kind of ragging the thing and having a bit of a go, and then in the Ute you've got to be very precise and very smooth with how you drive it because you can't
Mm.
just plant your foot down because you'll just light the rear tires up and you'll end up destroying the tires, and you can't slam on the brakes because you'll end up locking a front tire and stuff like that. So, and learning about the adjustability in the brake bias, so you can adjust it forward to have more front pressure. And then if it's, if you've got some high speed corners, you can adjust it rearward to give it some more rear stability. So, and it being a ute, it's got some ballast in the rear, but it's still pretty
Mm,
light in the rear. So getting
yeah,
used to how light it is in the rear, yeah, there's a lot of things to get used to. But once you get on top of it, they're a really cool car to drive.
I can imagine it being a very cool car to drive. Well, not really a car; it's actually a ute. But would you say
Yeah,
that?
yeah. Well,
Sorry, would you say they're just really a ute shell on a car chassis, or?
yeah, 100%. I mean, the, the only thing that they really carry over from what you see driving around on the road is really the body shell. The front and rear suspension are completely custom made. So there's no leaf springs or anything like that in the rear that you'd have in your tradie car or anything like that. It's a
Mm,
full, they're horizontally opposed shock absorbers with adjusting trailing arms and stuff like that, and a big 9-inch American racing diff housing in the back of them. So like they're a proper car, and in all honesty, they're like a V8 supercar with a Ute body on top of them. It's like if, for the better word, it's like the NASCAR Truck Series of Australia.
yeah,
In all honesty, so
I reckon it would be really cool to see like fake toolboxes on the back, or like fake bits of timber hanging out. I reckon that'd be pretty cool. But
yeah,
um,
yeah,
you know,
maybe for a promo, maybe not for racing.
yeah, maybe only for a promo. If they were gonna do a promo, they'd probably put the real toolbox on there and leave it unlocked. Drive around for
Probably,
a few spanners on the
probably,
road.
probably.
But you've also you've done a few Bathurst 6 hours, or have you done just the one?
Just done the 1 6 hour,
Yeah,
yep. But I've
and
since starting racing, I've raced at Bathurst 5 times now. So yeah, in a very short period of time, I've been there a fair few times. So
yeah. Well, for those who don't know, how did you go at the Bathurst 6 hour?
so it was my second time racing at Bathurst. So we qualified second in class, and then we ended up winning the class by 4 laps. And I was lucky enough to break the lap record in the class by I think just over 4.5 seconds or something like that. So
Jesus.
yeah, so no, that was a really cool event to do. We did it in a little Mazda 3 in Class E, the compact class, so the last class on the list. And yeah, we actually gave it to some of the other classes, like the D and C class cars. We actually gave them a bit of a run for their money, which was awesome. I mean, it kept me entertained for the day. I got to race some faster cars, and yeah, doing an endurance race at Bathurst is something different. I did it between me and my co-driver Brianna Wilson, who's a very accomplished pulsar racer, and we broke the 6 hours up into two stints each. So I think I ended up doing 2 hour and 45 stints. So that was pretty cool. You get yourself in a bit of a rhythm, and yeah, it was pretty wild. Like being in the compact class, we actually started around the corner at Bathurst. So yeah, remember lining up in the grid box, and I lined up about where you come into pit entry. So yeah,
Oh, that's a long way back.
it was a very long way back, and it doesn't take long for those Class X cars to come round and lap you. I think by about lap 2, they started lapping us. So
Jeez.
yeah, there's a lot to go on, and first time doing proper pit stops and refuels and doing driver changes, and you have to manage traffic when you're going across the top of the hill. So you're trying to look forward and go across Skyline, but then you're also trying to look out for Shane Van Gisbergen and all that coming behind you with the lights flashing. So yeah, but no, it was an awesome event. I loved it, and I'd definitely love to do more 6 hours in the future.
I just have one question. So you're sitting around
Mm.
the corner. Do you have lights there, or do you have to watch the cars ahead around the corner?
There's a flag marshal at
Oh, right.
the at around the corner there. So yeah, we started in our grid boxes, and then we did a rolling start. But
Oh,
by
yeah.
the time I got the call for a green flag, I think I was coming out of the chase. So yeah, your Shane Van Gisbergen and all that who were racing that year were coming across the control line under the bridge, getting the green flag, and we were still coming out of the chase, going flat out. So
Mm.
yeah, my race technically started a bit earlier than them because I had to go flat out just to keep up with them on the outlap. So yeah, it was
Did
pretty full on, but it was a cool event.
did a bit more than 6 hours of racing.
Uh yeah, just
Few corners, few corners before.
few corners before, yeah.
But what do you like most about driving in such an iconic track?
I just like the commitment of the track, in all honesty. Like going there in the 6 hour, you just had to nurse the car along. So It was a different type of racing, but like for instance, when we race on the 86s, it's just full commitment the whole time. And the 86s, you're flat from the
Mm.
cutting pretty well to Skyline. I think you have
Ooh.
a brief lift going through McPhillamy, and it's not
Mm.
even really a lift. Like you come off the pedal maybe 20%, if
Mm.
that. Um, and yeah, it's just about how committed you are, and I love that. It's because it can be a scary place to drive if you get it wrong, but when you get it right, it's just so rewarding. And yeah, like I've been fortunate enough to, when we won the 6 hour, I got to stand on the top step of the podium, and all that, and that was really cool. And then to race around it the amount of times that I've done in such a short span of time, I consider myself pretty lucky.
Yeah, 100%, man. You've had such a good run at Bathurst. I can't imagine what it'd be like standing with all them people underneath you. I'm
Yeah, no, it
sure.
was really cool.
Yeah. Did they have still a big crowd considering it was just a 6 hour or?
They did have a decent crowd from memory. Yeah, there was a fair few punters around, and I think it was more the teams that kind of gathered under the
Mm.
podium there for the podium presentation. So, but no, it was cool. Like you got to stand up and got the trophy, and I don't think we had champagne, but
Yeah,
yeah, just
good
doing
enough.
that was really cool.
You've also raced at the Bend and Townsville. What are those type of tracks like, with how technical Townsville is, with the walls right there, and how open the Bend is. So they were totally different tracks.
Yeah, completely opposite tracks. Townsville's a awesome track. It's you really got to hustle the car along to actually get some lap time out of it. There's a couple of sections where you really got to flow it, but you've got to hustle them pretty hard over the curbs there. And yeah, if you get it wrong, you're just going to eat the concrete. So yeah, I haven't had the best run at Townsville. And honestly, I had a pretty big smash there this year and got involved in a pretty big pile up. So it hasn't been that nice to me, but
Was that
no,
sorry,
it's just
was that the 86
yeah,
one?
yeah, the
Yeah.
86 one, yeah,
Yeah, do you know
yeah,
Hayden
yeah,
Hume?
yeah, yeah. He was. I
Yeah.
was the guy that I stoved in the back of it. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, we were watching the footage the other night. It was quite a weird one. Um,
yeah. So it was Hayden in front, and then me, and then I had my teammate Ruben Goodall into the back of me, and then I think Hayden Jackson was the last cart there. So yeah, that wasn't fun.
yeah, I can't imagine that it would be,
Mm.
but what do you think your goals are in motorsport?
Definitely to get the supercars. Just growing up as a kid, just seeing, you know, being a supercars driver, absolutely. But I think winning Bathurst is the
Yeah.
big tick for me, just because that's my deepest memories of racing and V8 supercar racing when I was a kid was Bathurst, and seeing the emotion and of
Mm.
winning the race from all those drivers that have won it before, and the emotion from the team, because they've put so much hard work in, and seeing just the joy and the relief of winning the race is something that I really aspire to do, because you only get to win it once, and I'd love to be a part of that list. So
Mm.
it'd be fantastic.
Well, who's got a free seat next year in V8s? Oh yeah, Pete Adderton. You want your boost driver? Right here. He's already won one Bathurst. Yeah.
Yeah,
You
I'd
don't need
happily,
Richie.
I'd, yeah, I'd happily go drive for Pete. I think he's doing some pretty cool things in supercars.
See, he's giving you a good rap, Pete. You gotta let him drive. You gotta let him drive. But have you got a favorite driver that you've always looked up to?
uh actually, like like your big iconic guys, like your Winterbottoms, and definitely Craig Lowndes is a big one for
Yeah.
me. I was very fortunate enough to work with him when we were at the Bend. He did the commentary for the Utes, so I got to have a pretty cool chat with Craig, and that was a really cool experience. Like I had
Mm.
to kind of tone down the fanboy inside of me and try and stay professional and talk about the racing and the Utes and all that type of stuff. And but I'm a big admirer of Mark Scape as well. I recently read his book that he released, and yeah, just how he went about his racing and how methodical he was in trying to make a race car go faster. I really admire that, and just how he
Mm.
kind of holds himself and how he perceives himself to the public and how he just demands perfection all the time. I really admire that. So, and yeah, like a big fan of Glenn Seaton as well.
Yep.
I think he's one of the big Ford heroes of the day, and yeah, someone like I've got somewhere in my house a photo of him signed somewhere. So, but yeah, all those guys I look up to, all for different reasons, but they just did really cool things in the sport.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And would you have any advice to someone who wants to get in motorsport, especially because you got into motorsport when you were my age?
Yeah, so it doesn't matter when you get in. Like, don't ever think you're too old. I
Mm.
think when I started, I kind of had that mentality and I wanted to rush it, but just if you want to get into it, go down to your local karting track and just start making connections and see where you go. Like, it doesn't really matter. Like, I remember we started out with $1,000 go kart off Gumtree or something like that, and we rocked up to my first race meeting and we didn't know anything about go karts, and we just put it in our box trailer and put a tarp over the top of it, and that's just how we did it. Like, we just had absolutely no idea about what we were doing,
Yeah.
but we just did it. We had fun. So get into it, however way you can, like whatever way you can, and just enjoy it for what it is. Like, it's just really cool to be a part of the motorsport fraternity.
100%. And have you got any racing left for the rest of the year? And do you have any plans for 2023 that you can share?
I do. I do have some things in the works for 2023. I can't share anything at the
Mm.
moment, but there's some pretty cool things happening in the background. So hopefully I get to announce that sooner rather than later. But yeah, you'll definitely see me on the grid for 2023.
So I'm guessing Beat Ayrton has signed you for Supercars Grid.
Who knows? Who knows?
Yeah, confidentiality. All right. But have you got any sponsors you'd like to thank?
Big shout out to Bowers Heavy Haulage. Without those guys this year, wouldn't have been able to even get on the grid, and everyone else involved. Got them on the shirts here. You can jump over to my socials, Ryan Gilroy and Ryan Gilroy Racing, and check them out. They do some really cool things in the business space. So, and yeah, without them, I wouldn't have been able to do what I do and continue to do what I do now. So,
And what social media can the viewers follow for all your progress in the future when you release your
uh,
plans?
yeah, so you can check me out on Instagram. It's Ryan underscore Gilroy underscore, I think. And on Facebook as well, Ryan Gilroy Racing. And that's where I keep most of the things up to date. We're starting to get a bit better on the social side. I'm not a guru on the social media by any measure, but we're getting better at it. So yeah, that's when you can see the next announcement.
Cool. So thank you so much for speaking to me tonight, Ryan. I wish you all the best for 2022 and even next year. So I look forward to seeing your progress and hopefully we get to catch up at the track sometime. But to anyone else who's racing this weekend, remember to drive fast and take chances. So, oh, well, safely, of course. Can't forget that. Thank you so much, Ryan, for catching up with me.
No worries, mate. Thanks for having me on your podcast. And yeah, keep doing what you're doing, mate. You're doing a fantastic job.
Thank you.